He is a sports gambling guru, head of research, a star with pregame.com, Mackenzie Rivers, on Twitter at Mackin Rivers. I am someone who hears Mackenzie on Saturday nights with Bernie Fratto on Straight Out of Vegas. You hear Mackin on Sports, that final segment from 11:45 to the top of the hour PM. 11:45 p.m. to midnight. It's Mackenzie Rivers with us. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor at FSR, on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. Mackenzie, when did you first feel like this was your calling?
And by this, you mean radio content provider?
Radio content / number crunching savant.
I don't know. I graduated in 2012. And the summer before, 2011, it was the finals of the Heat and the Mavericks. And I have my opinions. One of them being a Chicagoan is that Dwayne Wade was the most effective shooting guard since Jordan by a mile. And I also played with this small forward that was kind of a ball hog in high school. So I always kind of hated LeBron. So 2011 finals, my thinking was Dwayne Wade's playing better than anybody else in the world, and LeBron James not ready for this moment. The Mavericks are going to win. That was my idea after about game 2. So I literally listened to ESPN and whatever else programming I could get after the game 3, game 4, game 5 finals, and just like literally argued with the TV, like nonstop, just having my own opinions. You know, me, Skip Bayless, and Stephen A. Smith, as if we were a triumvirate, but no one could hear what I was saying. And my mom said, "Hey, you seem to love this shit. You seem to really enjoy. Why don't you, think about doing this? I was a junior in college. Why don't you think about doing this?" And I really hadn't thought about doing anything. I wanted to be a novelist or maybe a music critic, but I was just into art and I was an English major. I didn't really have any plans. So that next summer, I worked with the Washington football team and later the ESPN DC radio station, and I got the opportunity to work with Tony Kornheiser. And it was just, it fit like OJ's glove. It was just a natural, it was what I wanted to do. So, I've always been gravitating towards that, writing about sports, talking about sports. And luckily I got this opportunity with pregame.com, and it's just been really fun the last, 18 months.
How did that become a reality, you moving to pregame.com?
Well, RJ will tell you, the great RJ Bell will tell you, he gets a lot of emails and a lot of tweets about people, "Hey, I'd love to work with you." The trick is to stick to it. So it wasn't the first email I sent or the second email I sent, but eventually he was interested in one thing I had to say. I think it might have been about the Warriors, and we got a dialogue going, and I got the interview, and then I started a very small part-time role, just helping out with the radio show, and I've been able to grow in that role at pregame. So it's been a lot of fun.
When do you feel like you've had to gamble on yourself through this process of putting yourself out there, cold calling, and making this a career that you can obviously profit off of and keep moving forward?
The last time I heard this podcast, I'm sorry, I forget his name, but it was a very interesting conversation about a gentleman who introduced himself to Jon Stewart's agent, right?
Oh, yeah, a good one, yeah.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree with his advice more, in that when you meet certain people, you don't want to be a fan, even if you're a fan. You don't want to be, a bother to them. They're just like regular people that you might want to, help them. You might find a foster a beneficial relationship. So when I went to DC and I got that not even internship, I literally said, "Can I go to the radio station and hang out?" And I did, and I knew Tony Kornheiser worked there, but I didn't know Tony Kornheiser. I had some connections through the Washington football team, but not directly to him. But I just hung out. It wasn't the first day or the second day, but eventually I saw the man getting coffee, and I said, "Hey, a big fan of your work. PTI is something I watch every day since forever." I also told him I listened to his radio show every day, which I didn't know existed till a couple days prior. But I would have listened to it. I'm a big fan of Tony Kornheiser. But he said, "Yeah, why don't you just come in and hang out?" And that was just one example. RJ Bell is another example of if you just reach out. I was actually producing hip hop in college. I had a mixtape going, and the sound engineer told me, he said he actually won a Grammy sound engineering with Ludacris, and he said I did not know the man at all. 2 months before we recorded that album, I just sent him an email, said I liked his stuff, said I'm in Chicago, yada yada yada, come by and record. That kind of thing happens and works all the time. There's no risk in sending an email or in going up and walking up to someone. You'd be surprised how often that leads to what you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, a lot of people would go into that scenario thinking there's no way they would respond, there's no way they would do anything beneficial to me. But if you don't try, then it's like what Michael said, Michael Jordan, all the shots you don't take, you miss. Why not? Go for it. And if you come at it from a perspective where you're not looking at it as me, but learning about them, because in doing it in a real, authentic way, I think that goes a long way and can start a dialogue, which obviously has worked for you. The Mackin on Sports segment that you do with Bernie Fratto on Fox Sports Radio Saturday nights, final segment of the show, and that 11 to midnight hour. What goes into
Pacific time.
Pacific, yeah.
Yeah.
And what goes into planning that segment and sort of what you're looking at as far as best bets?
It's an interesting question. I work on so many different research projects throughout the day. I mean, throughout the week. It's probably my favorite one that didn't make it on Straight Out of Vegas in the weekday. That's just usually how it goes. Not necessarily, but yeah, there's so many different little research projects that go on. I'm actually a little happy when one of my favorite, more obscure, maybe difficult to wrap your head around concepts can't be used on the the weekday show, and then I can do my best to try to spin it on Saturday.
Were you always someone that knew that could possibly have a way with numbers? Because how I'm reading your tweets and I'm like, what language is this guy speaking?
That's funny because no, I mean I'm always good with numbers, like standardized tests and stuff. I was always good with math, but I was always just as good with English, and I always gravitated to it more. I wanted to be a novelist in college and my early adulthood, and probably my late adulthood once I admit it again. James Joyce character, but I'm interested. And this is going to sound crazy, but I'm interested in truth. Like the reason sports gambling is interesting to me is because there's 24 hours of content a day on every game or every big game, and you can whatever side or endorsement or particular angle you want to spin it. If you have any kind of talent as a creative person, you can make it seem reasonable. But sports betting, if it sounds reasonable but it's not, it'll lose, and it won't be, it's not worth its weight. So I'm actually interested in what these games are about. I mean, I always think sports is a great drama, great reality TV that's actually real in front of our lives, and we get to process it and look at all the numbers and look at all the trends and see what actually predicts the future. And what predicts the future is what's true about today. What's actually the quality of these teams, these players, is important to me. So numbers is a way to get at it. Um, I think logic and effective writing is a way, is something that you can process through numerical means, or it could be represented that way. I think truth is truth. So if road teams that travel more than 1,000 miles on Thursday night football only cover 40% of the time, it's a reality about life, about that week in a football team's life, that it's difficult to do. And that's why they usually perform just a little bit, a field goal worse than expectation. It's not me just commenting on it, it's me finding something true about reality. That's what I want to do.
I got two more questions. Mackenzie Rivers is with us on Twitter at Mackin Rivers. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. As far as, let's just say, for example, the NFC Championship game coming up this weekend between the Packers and the Bucks, how much time will you spend analyzing that game, looking at different numbers, different trends and odds?
I'd say the majority of my thinking about that game will be done through listening to other people's podcasts about it. We at pregame.com produce the Dream Preview, which is, probably my favorite before I worked on it, gambling podcast that will preview and recap every game. So a lot of people do that. It's kind of a generic way to handle analysis, and there's a lot of it will be repetitive, but a lot of it will be new. So I'll probably listen to 6 recaps of the division round and maybe 6 previews of this conference championship coming up. Outside of that, I've already spent a couple hours looking at different trends. Sometimes you'll spend 2 hours on a trend that ends up being you find probably irrelevant to your analysis of the game. So you never know when you're going to go down a rabbit hole that works and when one doesn't. So probably 3-4 hours, and of the, I mean, 3-4 hours plus the podcast plus listening, maybe 9 hours, 10 hours, but it's the over. I'm 4 hours in, and I haven't confirmed it. I haven't done all my work, but it's the over in that game. It's a strong bright light Batman signal that I'm following, and I'm pretty sure it's going to lead to some success. Over 51 Packers Buccaneers. You heard it here.
Wow. Okay. We are going to canvas that and remember that. So my final question for you, and look, wow, 8 to 9 hours looking at one specific game shows you how much this is, what it means to you as far as analysis, and how much different time and energy you put into it, and that it leads a lot of times for you to bets that win. And so if you were to point to an elaborate bet, a creative bet that you placed or that you offered up that hit in a big way that you're really proud of, what is that?
There's only one bet that made it that changed my life, and that was buying real estate in Las Vegas. And I would say, as a 23-year-old reading about buying real estate, especially in Las Vegas, 95% of the content I read was how you can't do it. It's a bubble, yada, yada, yada. So it didn't make sense to me what they were saying. It's like 40 million people come here a year, and it's priced the same as like a suburb of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Like, why wouldn't it be more expensive? This is a brand. So not listening to that type of pre-Great Recession talk about how, it's a bubble and you'll never make any money and no one can do it themselves. That kind of conversation is so prevalent. No one can beat the S&P 500. 90% of restaurants fail. That kind of conversation, literally, it makes losers feel better, but it's not reality. Anybody that applies themselves can win in any field. Maybe not the first or second try, but you can do it. So that realization, that light bulb clicking in my head was the biggest difference to me. That a lot of people are writing about it, but I disagree, and I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. And that worked out for me.
Mackenzie Rivers is a winner, maybe not so the guy whose jersey he's wearing, Jimmy Garoppolo. But
this is a political statement, by the way. He's never lost 2 games in a row. Give him a chance.